and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast off-season preview series where we go through all 30 teams and discuss what exactly they have in store for the 2025 NBA offseason. Today, we're talking about the Denver Nuggets, but first, go subscribe to the Game Theory Podcast YouTube channel. Go subscribe over on Spotify. Go subscribe over on Apple Podcasts. Wherever you get your listening content, we will put these up on the podcast feed. We will have them on the YouTube feed if you want to see a bit of a graphical understanding of everything that we're talking about. Go hit the subscribe button like over 35,000 of you have over on the YouTube channel. Bryce, we've got the Denver Nuggets today. The Denver Nuggets lose in the Western Conference semifinals. They take the Oklahoma City Thunder, who look like a wagon right now, into 7 games, and it was tough. It was physical. It looked like they had a shot to win the series at one point, and they ultimately just fall a little bit short. I feel like this team is close still. They've obviously made some changes in the front office. Calvin Booth is no longer there. As of the time that we're recording this, they don't have a general manager. It'll be interesting to see who that person is that they decide to bring in order to make all of these decisions in the offseason. I am of a few different minds here with the Nuggets, honestly. I think that they're probably going to have to just basically run back a decent amount of what they have, with the exception of potentially one player that I would like to move if possible. They have a couple of little small things to be able to figure out, like the Christian Braun extension. Honestly, like the thing that I think got Calvin Booth fired almost more than anything else is his catastrophic use of the taxpayer mid-level exception, where he used it on Reggie Jackson, who he had to trade for 3 second-round picks to get off of the money in order to get financially compliant last year with what they wanted to do. And then they signed Dario Saric, who was a catastrophe this year and was completely unplayable, to a deal that everybody understood was not going to work out whenever he signed that deal. So if the new GM can even just do something like that and change the paradigm just in terms of, let's get a competent player on the taxpayer mid-level, it would go a long way toward building out what is the most important thing for the Denver Nuggets, in my opinion, and why they are still sitting at home as opposed to playing. The depth has just been a substantial problem here, basically over the last 2 years since they lost Bruce Brown.
Well, and also the draft picks. We've talked about it. We've highlighted, we've laminated it, that a lot of those young guys didn't pan out the way they thought. We thought the process was decent in terms of older players at the end of the first, top of the second. Was it the right draft? Was it the right players? It doesn't look like it right now. Now, Julian Strawther, I haven't sold all of my stock on. Peyton Watson, we'll see. And unfortunately, Deron Holmes didn't get his rookie season last year. He'll get it this next season. And I think he is a rotation player for them. But the other thing we need to talk about here is David Adelman has been named the head coach of this team. So Michael Malone's replacement has been named. Calvin Booth has not at time of recording. David Adelman, we both felt like did a nice job with this team under the circumstances. We talked about the one blunder in terms of what was it, the start of the second quarter, having both Jokic and Murray on the bench, but we didn't think that was enough for him not to get this job. It's his job. And I think that's important to at least talk about and highlight here at the top, because now whoever the decision maker in terms of the roster is can go out and know, okay, Adelman is this, and this is what he wants, and these are the players he's looking for when you're talking around. Now, ultimately, it's who works best around Jokic and Murray and Gordon, but it still would be nice to know, okay, what type of players does my head coach want to play? What type of players is my head coach willing to play? Because, Sam, that was not something that did well between Malone and Calvin Booth. And I assume part of why both of them are no longer in charge in their respective positions.
Yeah, look, like it's public, and this has been happening behind the scenes for a long time, that like there was no synergy between Booth and Malone, right? Like it was a problem behind the scenes. So, having that synergy, hopefully, between David Adelman and the new general manager, I think will be critical. finding a general manager that is like amenable to working with David Adelman in that way, I think is just so important to how they do things. And I agree with you. I thought David Adelman was terrific in the playoffs. I thought he did an amazing job. Let's start here for the Nuggets. I think that the key for them is figuring out who are your core players, right? To me, it's Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, and I think Christian Braun is also in that mix.
I agree.
They have a decision to make this summer on Christian Braun. Christian Braun is up for an extension. I would imagine that is going to be substantial money that they are going to have to pay him. I think that number is probably somewhere between $25 and $30 million a year, honestly.
I think with how he ended up playing in the playoffs, I think I'm with you. I had this discussion with somebody all year long in terms of like, I thought the minimum for most of the year was like 20 million a year. And right, I think he played himself into definitely 20 something a year. I 30 seems like a lot, as much as I love Christian Braun, but I think somewhere in that realm, like it's going to be $100 million contract whenever you figure in the years.
So Jalen Suggs last year got a 5-year, $150 million deal.
Yeah.
I mean, if I am Denver's, or if I am Christian Braun's representation, I am definitely saying I want that deal. I think Jalen Suggs is a little bit better than Christian Braun personally, but I don't think he'd be out of pocket for saying like that's the comp at the end of the day. I do think that the number should probably be somewhere between 25 and 30 though a year. Yeah. And you're looking at that point at like a 4-year somewhere between 100 and 120, or a 5-year between 125 and 150.
Yeah.
Right.
And Suggs got 5 for 150 descending contract with Orlando, which, as you know, and the listeners know by now, I absolutely love. Yeah, I think that's the world we're in with Christian Braun. I really do. I thought he was really good all season. I thought he was good in the playoffs. And most importantly, when you're on the Denver Nuggets, and people could say every single player is going to have good synergy with Jokic, and they're probably right. I think Jokic loves Christian Braun, just like watching the interactions on the court, watching how they play off of each other, mostly how Christian Braun plays off of Jokic, how he drives transition. And here's the thing, at the end of the day, that is the only perimeter defender this team has in terms of like, I'm going to take the SGA matchup. I'm going to take the James Harden matchup. I'm like, that's the guy that does it for them. And it's not always phenomenal. He's not necessarily an all NBA level player, but he's the one. This is why you choose him over Michael Porter Jr., which is, I assume, where this conversation is going. That's why you keep Christian Braun and try to get off of the Porter Jr. money.
I agree. So Michael Porter Jr. is the name we didn't mention there. And he has a large amount of money left. He has about $79 million remaining over the course of the next 2 years. I think that deal is movable, given that there are only 2 years remaining on it. I don't think you're going to get like crazy value for it necessarily, but I do wonder if you could break it up into chunks and if that would be your best bet in terms of the way that you move forward with like the Michael Porter Jr. asset that you have on your books here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that's what they need to look to do. It's just like finding that trade. And I don't know that I would even try to go 1 for 1. If there's anything we've realized with this team, it's the depth, right? So I think here's what's crazy about whoever the new GM is. You have big time decisions to make immediately, in terms of the Christian Braun extension and nailing that. And then if this is the move in terms of trading Michael Porter Jr. or deciding who you're going to trade, how do you do that? Where do you send him? And finding those right guys to come back with or in exchange for Michael Porter Jr. Ideally, 2 guys, splitting him into 2 rotation pieces. And that would be great. That would be a great decision, I think, is making that happen. You got to go out and find it.
Is there a team that works for you in a deal like this?
So I struggle with Porter Jr. a little bit in terms of where does that really fit? I think you got to find a team with a really good defensive infrastructure, but one that's like not going to not play a bad defender in regards to that. So, I mean, as I look through, there's not a team that stands out. Does San Antonio interested in that? Like we always talk about getting more shooting around De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama, maybe there. It's like the Rockets have the defensive infrastructure, but I don't think Ime is going to want to play him. You know what I mean? So you got to kind of thread the needle of a team that's going to needs a shooting, can protect themselves defensively, but isn't so gung-ho defensively that they're not willing to take on his defensive limitations.
I will say, like, he is not a great defender. I think he's like playable on defense. Sure. Like, I don't think he is such a mess on that end. And I think like there are moments where he's actually like somewhat effective, honestly, on defense. But I think that like he is not quite as much of like a turnstile on that end as what, you know, maybe sometimes he gets, you know, hit for being. The Spurs are an interesting one. Like if you could find a way to do like Harrison Barnes and Keldon Johnson for Michael Porter Jr., that's like somewhat interesting to me, but I think the Spurs probably have their eyes set on bigger prizes than Michael Porter Jr. this summer. But if that ends up being like a bit of a, hey, like let's turn around and do something like this, I would kind of understand that a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like Harrison actually had a sneaky good offensive season for San Antonio, doing what they needed him to do as a veteran. Like I think about Golden State, but like, is he going to like, I like the idea of his shooting in terms of that offense, but like, is he going to, will he do all the off the ball movement stuff and whatever? Maybe he can, you know, he's been playing off of Jokic for how many ever years now. So is that a situation where they could use some scoring punch off of Steph and Draymond and some real shooting? Maybe that would be a team. Now they've moved some of their assets already, but would Denver be interested in, like, I feel like you're just adding some, like, is it Moses Moody and somebody else? You know, would that be interesting to Denver with gold? You know, it's not going to be pods. You're not moving pods if you're Golden State, but is it Moody, like Moody and I don't know, one of the bigs? And I don't know how you get to the money, I guess would probably be the issue there. So.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be hard to get to the money. Like, I actually don't think that they can. I mean, the Hawks are often brought up just because they like these guys that are bigger wings around Trey. Like, the money, again, is really hard to get to. Like, it'd have to be like Terrence Mann, like George Niang, and then it probably has to be like an Okongwu or something, and that doesn't really work just financially. Like, it's hard to actually put together a deal structure there. The other team that, like, I was wondering about is Detroit. Like
he comes up a lot.
Yeah, it'd have to be like Tobias Harris and like Fontecchio would get the money. Like, is there like a Tobias Harris Fontecchio deal for Michael Porter Jr. that works, or do you just keep? I think I probably just keep Tobias Harris, honestly.
Yeah, I think so. You know, again, this will be whenever we do the Pistons one, we'll probably talk about those veterans and kind of the vibes and stuff like that. I would be a little bit nervous with not that Porter Jr. has bad vibes, just saying that Tobias really came in and was a great veteran for them. And so that I struggle finding that one making sense for Detroit, as much as I understand why it happens in terms of their need for continued floor spacing and all of that. Okay, what are some of the teams we brought up for Darius? Because like, so now I find myself going, is there a like, can we get crazy? And like, would Michael Porter Jr. make sense in Cleveland? Darius goes somewhere else, and then Denver gets pieces from both of these teams in some capacity. Like, is there some structure there with a Darius team?
I mean, I will just note that like Darius is just way better than Michael Porter.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, it would take a whole bunch of other stuff making this work.
Yeah, like, could Utah have some stuff that
balances it all out? Yeah.
Like, could you do, John Collins and Colin Sexton to Denver And then like the Jazz would have to send stuff to
Cleveland
as well.
That's what I wonder.
There might be something there.
If so like for Cleveland, you're getting this little bit more size. You're getting this off-ball player now. Like if you're wanting to do this with Darius. And that's why I said 3-team deal, because I don't think you can find the Darius for Michael Porter Jr. Straight swap, right? Because Darius is a better player. But I just wonder, can the third team, the team that takes Darius, can they accumulate enough stuff that we'll send some of this to Denver and then we'll send a little bit to Cleveland to go with Porter Jr. and that'll satisfy everybody?
Yeah, I mean, the Jazz would have to send so much to me.
Yeah, that's the thing. Maybe
and like Denver too. Yeah, like Denver would have to send stuff to Cleveland too, because if you're just getting maybe, I don't know, Porter Jr. for Sexton and Collins, like probably is okay to me. Like I might be fine with that. But like, does Collins work really there? Not as much for me. I don't know. This probably doesn't work for me, honestly. The more I think about it.
So I was just looking through teams. Like that was the one way I thought maybe Cleveland would make sense for him. As I look through East teams.
Yeah. But so like the key here is I think it's going to be a little bit harder to move Michael Porter Jr. Here's the other thing with Michael Porter Jr. that like we all know, but like, is a thing. He has played 81 and 77 games over the last 2 years. He has been very healthy, and we hope that continues to be the case. We also know that he had like some real medical concerns coming into the NBA draft. That is why he fell. He missed his entire first season. And then he missed the second season in 2021-22 as well, essentially, the entirety of that year. I will be interested to see like if there are teams that are worried about his medicals moving forward. And if that could also work to depress the market a little bit more on Porter Jr. than what people are expecting moving forward.
Yeah, it's obviously a factor with him. And, even this, I don't know what this shoulder injury is going to end up being or causing or, disrupting in terms of his offseason and into next year. But it was obviously something he deserves credit for playing through in the playoffs, but could complicate things in terms of if I'm moving assets, if I'm making a move to bring in Michael Porter Jr., I would want him fully healthy. I would want him in an offseason where he's able, depending on the team, I guess. But I think that's a factor as well. So the overall health here is a real thing, along with the contract, which I'm glad you brought up at the start, where only 2 years left on that thing does make it a little bit more palatable for people.
Yeah, I don't think it's an unmovable deal by any stretch anymore. Like I think that it is movable. It's just that you're probably going to be moving it for like not necessarily value, but like other players that might be like semi-distressed assets, and like kind of breaking the deal up into chunks. And I think that's kind of what Denver needs. I think there are workable deals out there. It's just hard to find them kind of, in the midst of what we're doing right now. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, no, it's really fascinating. This is a name that I've been really interested in, just to see what the value is for him. How, because I could see teams talking into this size with the shot making and all of that. And then I could also see if the right team or a couple teams aren't out there, Denver struggling to get right value for him to make the move. And if you don't move him, then what do your books look like? Right. I mean, if Christian Braun,
so we can talk about that.
Okay.
So, if they don't move him, they are currently 7.1 million away from the second apron. They're 11.6 million over the luxury tax line. If they don't move him, the situation that they're looking at for the summer of 2026 gets pretty onerous again, because you have Jokic at 59. Jamal Murray's salary jumps this summer by 10 million because of the extension that he signed. So, we're going from 36 this year that he made up to 46 next year, and then 50 in 2026-27. So between Jokic, Murray, and Michael Porter Jr., you're already at $150 million on the books.
Yep.
For the year 2026-27. And oh, by the way, you have Aaron Gordon as well.
Jumps 10 also.
31 that year. And then you're talking about Christian Braun, probably, at somewhere between 25 and 30, let's call it. That's another $20 million jump. It gets really difficult. And I think that it'll be even easier to move Michael Porter Jr. that summer. But if I'm Denver, I'm probably looking to move Michael Porter Jr. Honestly, like maybe the spot is Utah. Maybe it is something like Michael Porter Jr. to Utah for like John Collins and Colin Sexton. They obviously have Lowry, so like it's not quite a great fit, but like maybe it's a 3-team deal where they're getting those two guys and you're trying to make it work, or, figuring out, ways to mix and match players going multiple directions. And you're getting like some of the Utah guys that are also on 1-year deals, but like not seen as being on great money either for what they bring.
Yeah. The other one that always comes up every conversation we have was Brooklyn. I just don't know that Brooklyn makes sense for him right now. Like this is where we talked about a couple months ago, if Brooklyn won the draft lottery or even ended up second, it really changes the offseason, because if they're going to land Cooper Flagg or Dylan Harper, they may be a little bit more aggressive with their money, where with the way things shook out, they're probably a little more inclined to just be taking bad money for assets or something like that. So I don't know that they make as much sense as if it was, hey, we're adding Cooper Flagg, let's bring in Michael Porter Jr. We can just take it into cap space and just send back a couple guys or, whatever, and really make this work. I don't think they make as much sense to me.
Is there like a send Michael Porter Jr. to the Hornets move for like Josh Green, Grant Williams, Josh Okogie kind of thing?
So I thought about Charlotte as I was looking through the East, and then I was like, okay, what does this look like? Him and Brandon Miller. I don't hate it. I would be interested in that. I would be interested. You could talk me into it.
It breaks all those deals into chunks. It saves them,
Who did
something
you say?
Like I said Josh Okogie, Grant Williams, Josh Green would be the 3.
Okay.
And that money works, by the way.
And so then you're hoping you get 2 rotation players out of that. If you get right. Grant Williams off the injury. I kind of like Josh Green. I actually wonder if he wouldn't fit decently with them coming off the bench, just cutting, defending, those type of things. I think that I can hear Nuggets fans not liking this and being very underwhelmed with the return like that. I think that the guys we're talking about with this deal, the Utah deal is much sexier, but I think this is the type of stuff you'd be looking at, I feel like. Yeah,
I actually kind of like this one. I mean, I'll pull it up on the screen in terms of like the money working, but yeah, I kind of think that like a Josh Green, Grant Williams, Josh Okogie move, because it saves them like $14 million the next summer too, by the way. Because Josh Okogie would be expiring after this year. You just pick up his option or whatever for this year. I don't know. This is the kind of deal that I can see happening where it's like, okay, we're breaking up this deal into different assets basically, and maybe we can move Josh Green and Grant Williams, or maybe Josh Green just like works in Denver, which I agree with you. I think that actually could work in Denver pretty well. And the Hornets get Michael Porter Jr., which is a player that probably helps them like in a real way. He's a good fit with LaMelo. He's a good fit he's a good fit actually between Miles Bridges and Brandon Miller to me. Like if you told me that their starting group next year is LaMelo Ball, VJ Edgecombe, Brandon Miller, or no, you bring VJ Edgecombe off the bench and it's LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Michael Porter Jr., Miles Bridges, VJ Edgecombe off the bench. That's actually like a pretty decent group to me that I think they could get behind.
Yeah, no, I don't mind that. Yeah. And for Denver, again, I think if you turn Michael Porter Jr. into, like, you got to figure out the starting lineup here, but if you can turn him into two real rotation guys like Green and Williams, if you can get something like, again, I think Deron Holmes II is going to be a rotation player for them next season. That was the best thing about when his Achilles happened, was it was the first game of Summer League. So he's going to be like ready to go going in. I assume we'll see him at Summer League this year. And then throughout the summer offseason into next year, you get him. And then, like, whether it's Peyton Watson or Julian Strother, and then I know we want to talk about like how they use their tax ML, like you could get a decent rotation all of a sudden. And that's the Nuggets problem, Sam. It's not high-end talent. You have the highest of high-end talents. In my opinion, you have the best player in the world. And Jamal Murray, I think, showed in stretches he still has enough. And Aaron Gordon was really good as well. I think you have enough of that talent. Can you get 8 or 9 dudes to get you through the regular season and then get 7.5 of those for you in the playoffs, as opposed to like, oh my gosh, can we even play 5.5 guys in a series?
The other thing that this deal does, by the way, is it breaks up the Porter deal into like smaller contracts for potential trades in season. So if you find that like Josh Green and Grant Williams don't work, right? It's just way easier to move their deals. Like, it's way easier to construct trades for role players when the guys that you're moving are $13 million, $13 million, $7 million, right? It makes them just way more flexible on their cap sheet moving forward. I actually love this deal the more I look at it for Denver, and I like it for Charlotte too.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting swing for Charlotte. That would be a fun offensive team to watch, like, for sure. And, you know, again, like, I'm looking at Grant Williams' numbers here. Like, he gets back to that's a floor spacer for them, a physical, forward. Again, I kind of like Josh Green probably more than most people do. I think he would fit nicely. Like, he would be your Chris. You know what we've been saying for a while is it wasn't that KDP left because Christian Braun was there to quote unquote replace that. It was who was going to replace Christian Braun in the second unit. I'm not saying Josh Green is what Christian Braun was a year ago, but I think he at least gives you the opportunity to fill that role off the bench that Christian Braun was doing a couple years ago.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. The final thing we have to talk about here is just Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook has a player option this summer. Honestly, I think it worked out great this year. I think it worked out really well in Denver. I think it worked out as well as it could have possibly been hoped. Averaged 13 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists in the playoffs. Like, he had a couple of really important moments for them. Look, like, I get it that it's complicated with Russ. Things can get tricky, certainly, in terms of trying to make him fit, on a team that really, makes sense and works. I think I probably want to continue with Russ if I'm Denver. I hope he picks up the player option if I'm them. If he doesn't, like, you can go out and you can probably find a different player, and you can hope that some of the kids like Deron Holmes and Julian Strother and Peyton Watson step up a little bit more. But I kind of want Russ if I'm Denver is where I'm at.
I'm fine with Russ in the regular season. What he brought them in the regular season was perfectly fine. I was at 2 different Nuggets games this year. The energy that changes when he steps on the floor, and again, his ability to play off of Jokic, which I know a lot of people play well off of Jokic, but I think it all works. The thing is, you have to round out the rest of the roster so Russ isn't your 6th player in the playoff rotation. That's where the issue lied, in my opinion, was if Russ is your 8th guy and it's like, okay, we play him whenever we could use this jolt of energy, or we play him, they had to play Russ. They had no other options but to play Russ was the issue for me. So I'm with you. I thought from the beginning it was going to be a nice regular season fit. Honestly, it probably worked better in the playoffs even than what I thought, but I think he can really make sense and be helpful to this roster if he's in the right role, regular and postseason.
The final thing that I do want to bring up here, just in terms of their financial picture here, Dario Saric has a $5.4 million player option. It was reported kind of early in the playoffs that, he might look to go back to Europe. in order to like play more. He would be a significant like contract player over there. Like he would get probably not 5 million, but he would get like multiple millions to go play over there. It seems like, the Denver Post is reporting that he intends to exercise that $5.4 million player option. And of course, like he should, right? Like whatever he wants to do, like makes total sense to me. For what it's worth, like he told the Post, I didn't sign a contract with anybody, overseas is what he's talking about there. Obviously, I still have my contract for Denver next season with my option. My family and I haven't decided yet. I'm still focused on finishing this season. And once it's over, we'll see what the best choice is for me. If they could get his money off the books, I mean, my goodness, like it'd get them 12 million away from the second apron. Like it would give them some real flexibility. It actually get them like slightly below the first apron if he doesn't pick up that player option, I believe. I mean, what a gift that would be for them, but I would not anticipate that happening either. You're muted.
Sorry. 5.5 for next year. And this is a contract we've talked about, him and Najee both, right? Like they threw some real resources into like that forward backup big-ish type of archetype with Najee, with Saric. Again, it's not Deron Holmes' fault that he tore his Achilles, and they didn't get anything from those guys this year. That was $14 million between Najee and Saric, and you couldn't get anything in definitely not the postseason, but really didn't get much from either of those guys in the regular season either. And those are the margins that whenever you're working with the numbers we laid out earlier, those are the margins you have to win on.
Yeah, I mean, just looking through the margins, speaking of that, any options that could be available in the taxpayer mid-level range, I think it just gets really hard to find, names in that area that could track for them. I mean, if I was a player in that range, I would absolutely want to go there to play with Jokic, because I think I would get paid immediately after. Like that would be amazing to me, like signing a 1 year or a 2 year deal with like an opt out after one, essentially what Saric did this summer. That'd be amazing. Like I don't know if you're going to find a better spot to be able to go play. If I'm them in terms of what I'm looking for, it kind of depends, I think, on what they do with the Porter contract and how they are able. Maybe they can break that up. Maybe they can't. If I could find a backup center, it would be amazing. If not, I'm probably looking more toward like a backup wing, assuming that I keep Russ.
Yeah. And my thing is like, we just never know. The three guys that popped to mind that ended up on min deals last year, if memory serves correctly, were Tyus Jones with Phoenix, and then the two in Milwaukee, like Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince. All of those guys. And so going into last offseason, I wouldn't have guessed that those guys would have ended up on those contracts. So there are going to be names that come available in regards to that. They have to identify them, they have to find them, and they have to be ready to jump on that. The big thing is, I'm glad you brought it up, because as I was looking through the roster here, DeAndre Jordan's an unrestricted free agent. Like, having a true backup big would be nice for this team. It's something that they could definitely use to add to the roster.
And Gary Trent Jr., for what it's worth, obviously a free agent this summer, like that's a name that kind of works for me.
Sure.
As well. Like that's an interesting name on like the taxpayer mid-level for them. As a guy who can come in and shoot 40% from three and, be able to get to the line here and there occasionally. Like he's not, out here, really drawing free throws at a high level. He only averaged 1.2 this past year, but in Toronto, like he'd get there like, 3 to 4 times a game, I felt like. And, is a strong body on defense. He's not a great defender, but like he's at least physical at 6'5" and willing to like get his body in there. So I think that he would be a name that really tracks for me, is one of those spots. Again, though, I would probably try to look for a big if I was them.
I agree.
Okay. I think that's what we covered. I think that's all we got. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky. Got the Substack, the Pistons Pulse podcast. Otherwise, you can find me right here, the Game Theory podcast with the Sam Vecenie.
go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. We will be back tomorrow with another offseason preview. I think that tomorrow might end up being the Pistons. Bryce's beautiful organization with his banner behind there. We'll keep you guys updated though on the schedule for when these things are coming out. I think that's all we got. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go subscribe over on Spotify. Hit the like button if you stop by. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.